The average person breathes approximately 22,000 times a day. Breathing is of course essential. Without breathing, we literally wouldn't exist, and yet so many people today don't breathe efficiently. This video will first talk about the mechanics of the breathing system, then tools to improve your breathing, and then finally settle the age-old debate on mouth breathing versus nasal breathing. In this video, I was going to be extremely detailed and talk about the specific biology of how you breathe, from the larynx to the intercostal muscles to the specifics of the lungs and so on. I intend for this video to be easily digestible, and so I've put this information in a not included part of the description. I will only cover the most fundamental things. Now, when you breathe, it's perfectly normal that one nostril is harder to breathe through than the other, and that it switches throughout the day. The nasal cycle is a natural process in which airflow alternates between the two nostrils every couple of hours. Allowing one nostril to take a break helps prevent over-drying and overloading of the nasal tissues, as well as the ability to better filter air, which I will discuss further later. You can change the dominant nostril yourself by lying on one side of your body, which can cause increased blood flow to the lower nostril, making it the less dominant nostril for airflow. The nasal cycle is typically subconscious, so many people are unaware it's occurring unless they actively test for it. I remember, however, that when I was younger, I was constantly obsessed with blowing my nose because I always felt one nostril was blocked. You have to simply become less of what is known as interoceptively aware of it, which is a topic I detailed in my video on meditation, which I will also link in the description down below. On the topic of natural mechanisms within your body, did you know that hiccups can be prevented from breathing? Most methods that stop chronic hiccups from continuing to occur, like raising your hands in the air or downing a bunch of water, typically don't work, but the method I'm about to share does. The reason we get hiccups is because we get a spasm of the phrenic nerve that connects to the diaphragm. If you can stop the phrenic nerve from spasming, you can stop the hiccups. To do so, simply inhale 3 times in a row without exhaling in between. Take a breath through the nose. Before you exhale, take a second breath through the nose. And once again, before you exhale, take a third breath through the nose. Each time, try and get as much air into your body as possible. The third breath will, of course, be a very, very short amount of time. Once done, hold for a couple seconds and exhale slowly through the nose. I'm going to demonstrate the technique now, so you go. By doing this technique, this hyperextends what's called the phrenic nerve over a short period of time so that it relaxes and alleviates the spasming of the phrenic nerve, which, long story short, can create hiccups. Now, if you want to increase your heart rate, you can simply inhale longer and more vigorously relative to your exhales, which simply put is hyperventilation. If you want to decrease your heart rate, you can simply make your exhale longer and or more vigorous relative to your inhales. This process is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Hopefully I said that right. And it is the basis of what we call heart rate variability, as well as the basis for practically any breathing practice. For example, if you look at Wim Hof, it is essentially hyperventilation that he's practicing in this Wim Hof technique. In theme with this, we can breathe to reduce cortisol as much as possible and greatly improve levels of calmness. The physiological sigh is great at reducing cortisol due to it very optimally balancing oxygen and carbon dioxide. In fact, the physiological sigh is the fastest physiological way that we know of that reduces your levels of stress and reintroduces calmness. Physiological sigh was discovered by, well, you guessed it, physiologists in the 1930s, who found that when people underbreathe, they have a buildup of carbon dioxide in their system, and even though the carbon dioxide is essential for life, you don't want too much of it in your system, and that people would engage in a, physiological sigh spontaneously and subconsciously to eliminate excess carbon dioxide from the system and rebalance the oxygen to carbon dioxide ratio. To do the physiological sigh, simply breathe through your nose as much air as you can, and then continue doing it one more time, following it with a long exhale. I'm going to demonstrate it now. So you go. As you could tell, it's very relaxing, and what you're probably doing right now is comparing it to the method I showed earlier on how to stop hiccups, with the only difference that you would breathe 2 times instead of 3. I guess you could also do the physiological side to fix your hiccups, but you got to keep in mind that the goal for the hiccup method is to stretch the phrenic nerve as much as possible, instead of optimally balancing oxygen and carbon dioxide. The physiological sigh is also useful at removing a stitch you get from running or swimming or cycling or doing other exercises. When you get a stitch, realise this isn't a cramp. It occurs when you irritate your diaphragm, and there is a good chance it has occurred because you aren't breathing properly, although it could also be because you didn't warm up properly or ate too soon before exercise or just aren't used to that exercise. Therefore, by rebalancing the oxygen to carbon dioxide ratio in your body, this can alleviate such a stitch. Now, for those unaware, I'm going to quickly talk about the relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. The cells in our body use oxygen to break down glucose from food and release energy. In this process, carbon dioxide is also produced as a byproduct. Glucose plus oxygen equals carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide exhaled as a waste product. All the cells and tissues of your body need both oxygen and carbon dioxide. In fact, carbon dioxide plays critical roles in delivering oxygen to your cells, and without carbon dioxide, you're not going to get enough oxygen to the cells. Because of the ways that it regulates brain state, carbon dioxide can actually create states of panic or anxiety if too much is exhaled out of the body, which is why when you hyperventilate, you feel an increase in anxiety. When you feel an increase in anxiety, for example a panic attack, you hyperventilate. It's a reciprocal relationship as such. When you hyperventilate, you exhale too much carbon dioxide from your body, which can cause your blood vessels to constrict, reducing blood flow to your brain and other areas of your body. As stated previously, I don't want to over detail this video, but just know that some carbon dioxide is essential for your body, despite what some may have told you, and that when you exhale, carbon dioxide is taken from the bloodstream back into the lungs and expelled out of your mouth/nose into the world. Now we've established the importance of carbon dioxide in your body, I would like to use this to help you determine how healthy your breathing is. Championed by Andrew Huberman, a carbon dioxide tolerance test measures how well you can control your breathing at both the mechanical and chemical level. This test has nothing to do with your fitness level. World-class athletes have done this test and have very low carbon dioxide tolerance. I should also point out that if you're very stressed, that number is going to be very small, and the opposite is also true. If you're very relaxed, you're going to have a higher carbon dioxide tolerance if you're more relaxed. To do this test, it requires two parts. The first part is getting as much oxygen into your body as you can through your nose. Just one inhale will do. And when you're ready, exhale through the nose as slowly as you can, seeing how long you can exhale air before your lungs are empty. This must be done through the nose though. If it took you less than 20 seconds to expel all your air, that is, you couldn't extend the exhale longer than 20 seconds, there's reasonable evidence that you have a relatively brief or low carbon dioxide tolerance. If you took somewhere between 25 and 40, maybe even 45 seconds to expel all the air, then you have a moderate level of carbon dioxide tolerance. If it's higher than that, you have a fairly high carbon dioxide tolerance. Now, if you had a low carbon dioxide tolerance, you're going to write down a number 3, maybe in your head on a paper, don't care. If you have a moderate carbon dioxide tolerance, you're going to write down the number 5 to 6, depending on how long it is within that bracket between 25 to 45 seconds. If you have a high carbon dioxide tolerance, you're going to write down the number 8 to 10, once again, depending on how long it is. Now you've got your number, we're going to do part 2 of the carbon dioxide tolerance test. You're going to do 2 to 3 minutes of what is known as box breathing. Box breathing is inhaling, then holding that breath, then exhaling, then holding once again for an equal amount of time each time. Depending on what your number is, you will inhale, then hold, then exhale, then hold for that number in seconds. For example, you do a 3-second inhale, then 3-second hold, then 3-second exhale, then 3-second hold until you reach the 2 to 3 minute mark, depending on how long you want to do it. This is an exercise you can do once or twice per week to greatly increase your neuromechanical control over the diaphragm through neuroplasticity. For people that don't have a very high carbon dioxide tolerance, they don't have very good neuromechanical control of the diaphragm. Not necessarily because you aren't fit though, remember. And so when this happens, it can be very hard to do box breathing. For example, if you've tried doing 8 seconds for each hold, exhale, inhale, hold, all of that, and you have a very low carbon dioxide tolerance, you just aren't going to be able to do it. You don't want it to be too hard because you're trying to translate this pattern to a normal pattern of breathing when you're not consciously thinking about breathing. You may be wondering, what is the point of this carbon dioxide tolerance test? Well, it has a huge number of benefits, like helping your ability to stay calm and not hyperventilate, like controlling the hyperexcitability of the brain. It reduces bouts of stress, and it even improves nighttime sleep. You need about 6 litres of air per minute. You can train the skill of doing this with fewer and fewer breaths over time, and therefore stop breathing too much. In just a few weeks of doing this box breathing, you can progressively improve this skill and extend your carbon dioxide discard rate. It translates to deeper and yet less frequent breathing when at rest and when not consciously paying attention to how you're breathing during the daytime. For those comparing notes, meditation also helps with keeping your brain calm, but it is a better tool to improve focus and memory. It is literally a focusing and refocusing exercise, whereas box breathing is about utilizing breathing to directly improve calmness and reduce stress, which is a separate exercise. So now we've discussed the mechanics of breathing, as well as tools you can implement to better such breathing. Let us now settle the age-old debate of mouth breathing versus nose breathing. With confidence, I can say that nose breathing is superior to mouth breathing, despite it being estimated that up to 50% of modern adults breathe through their mouth. Chronic mouth breathing can lead to a vast array of issues, such as introducing unfiltered, poorly humidified air into the lungs, chronic overbreathing, an increased chance of snoring, bad breath, dental decay, gum disease, which if you want more information on that, I've made a video on, which I'll put in the description below. Chronic mouth breathing can also create dysfunction in the jaw joint, narrow of the dental arch, jaw and palate, create a crowned or crooked teeth, even create trauma to soft tissues in the airways. Nose breathing not only negates all these terrible side effects, but it also provides unique benefits on its own, like giving you a sense of smell, filtering the air you intake, and allowing you to intake more oxygen in comparison to mouth breathing. Nose breathing imposes approximately 50% more resistance to the airstream as compared to mouth breathing. This results in 10% more oxygen uptake. Breathing through your nose is supposed to be a little harder, but because it's a little harder, because there's more resistance, that is, you're actually able to draw more force into these mechanical aspects of the breathing apparatus and actually bring more air into your lungs. Try breathing in through your mouth to maximally inflate your lungs, and notice how you can't inflate your stomach as much as you can with your nose. This increased resistance allows you to draw more air into the system. There are some exceptions to when mouth breathing is okay, and one example is exercise. Breathing faster to raise your heart rate of course takes more energy than breathing slower, so the intensity of your exercises should determine your breathing speed. If you're doing a long distance run at an easy pace, for example, you should do slow breathing as your body doesn't need that much oxygen, and the slow breathing helps keep your heart rate lower, which conserves energy and improves endurance. In faster, more intense runs, you should breathe faster as you need to deliver more oxygen to your muscles to maintain speed. Otherwise, you'll put your body in a hypoxic state, which is when you're not getting enough oxygen to your body. In general, match your breathing rate to your effort level. Using this method, we can determine when you should nasal breathe and when you should mouth breathe during exercise. When you feel like you're not getting enough oxygen through your nose alone, which will be most common during high intensity exercise, you should mouth breathe. And if you can get enough oxygen through your nose, you should nasal breathe. Also, you should never hold your breath when you're exercising. All the time in MMA, when I'm sparring, I see new guys come in and they're holding their breath while throwing punches. Doing this, they think they're going to get massive punches, but it only makes you gas out quickly as you're not getting enough oxygen to your muscles, and it's also like not optimal for power either. Excelling on your punches will give you optimal power, just don't hold your breath. You've got to make sure you're breathing when you're doing your punches. I guess this set of notes is more for people that actually train martial arts, but case in point how breathing can be very beneficial to improving exercise. You can't get enough oxygen when you're trading in the pocket, for example in boxing. Just remember to step back, breathe every now and then, and play defense. You're not going to have any power if you're gassed out of energy in the pocket. You're just going to get knocked out if the other guy has energy. This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any advice in the description below, I'd greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer. And yeah, see you later.